So this is class 9 and we'll be discussing the spur gear and hence the Lewis equation today. Let me just share the slide with you. Yeah. So this is where we stopped in the previous class. Yeah. So just a recap of some of the concepts. We have different circles that are described on the gear profile. So keeping gear profile into consideration, that is, you have an addendum, dedendum, and its associated circles. So the outermost part represents the addendum circle, the innermost the dedendum circle, and in between you have a base circle and a pitch circle. So all those definitions part we had seen in the previous class. So we'll come to the importance of all those circles and how they affect our design of the spur gear and its gear tooth profile. Okay. So as the addendum circle, as it suggests, that borders the top of the gear tooth in the cross section. So the topmost border, okay, so that is basically the line joining the topmost face, okay, topmost or the tip of the tooth, okay, that corresponds to the addendum circle. And similarly, dedendum circle, the bottom of the spaces between the tooth in the cross section. So this represents the dedendum circle. Okay, that goes on here. Fine. And we understood the importance of pitch circle. Yes. So pitch circle is the one where the involute is defined, or we also call as the pitch point. Okay. So where two cylinders roll over each other. It can be imagined to be two cylinders with that particular diameter to be rolling over each other. We know that in effect that tooth surfaces are rolling over each other and it is always a line contact. Okay. And also we know where are the stress concentration areas now. Though the tooth can be described as simple cantilever beam, but at the same time here at the edge part, okay, that is the bottommost, or we call it at the root part, that is a area between the flank and the bottom land, that is where the stress concentration will occur. Okay, so this is about the gear working, or you can say the gear profile. Now we'll look at closely at this profile. We'll look closely at this profile. What is it called and what is its importance? Yeah. So let us go to the slide here. Did I describe that? Okay. You might have heard about the law of gearing. Okay. The law of gearing. Maybe in a lower semesters in one of the chapters. So what does this law of gearing tell you? The fundamental law of gearing tells you. Okay, you might have come across a simple gear over here, or just a simple pendulum like structure. Then exactly opposite to it is something that is driving it. So something like this. So maybe you are familiar with this kind of figure. So whatever it is, one tooth is pushing the adjacent tooth on the next gear. So that describes a circle. Okay, the path that is traversed by an area or a line on the first tooth or the gear is describing a circle. In the same time, there is one more that is describing a circle from the opposite side. So what does the law of gearing tell us? So the common normal to the tooth profile at the point of contact must always pass through a fixed point. So if I just enlarge it here, so this is the pinion, okay, common normal of the tooth, okay, and this is of the gear. So if you draw a common normal, must always pass through a fixed point that is called as a pitch point on the line of centers. So there is something called a pitch point, okay, and also there should be a common tangent or common normal to the tooth profiles. Okay, common normal to the tooth profiles. So, and that is on the line of centers. Okay, if you locate on the line of centers, and this should have a constant velocity. What we are saying is, suppose say this is v1, okay, and v2, or correspondingly you have omega 1 and omega 2. What is the difference? V refers to linear velocity and omega refers to the angular velocity. Now with this in mind, what should be our objective is that omega 1 minus omega 2 must be equal to a constant. It is not to say that both pinion and gear is running at the same speed or RPM is the same. It is to say that at that particular point, okay, at that instant, omega 1 by omega 2, okay, must be a constant. Only when it is a constant, only when this is a constant, the gears will work. Okay, so this is the principal law of gearing. Maybe you have studied in the lower semesters. So I'll not just go very deep into it. So starting with this, we'll come to the profile nature now. So what is the profile nature of this? See, for example, if you ask anyone, maybe before the gears were invented, how would you design a gear? Okay, if someone got an idea, what he would do? Of course, he would see some things in nature and simply say, okay, I'll do something like this, something for the gaps and something like a pointed tooth profile. Okay, and the opposite one will be somewhat like this. Okay, so it will rotate in its own axis. One is pushing the other. There is normal force, and so on. Okay, this is a very crude method to describe. But if you closely notice how this should be designed, should it be pointed or should it be rounded, okay, or some other shape, any other shape? So this is our question now, and that brings us to the Lewis form factor. Okay, so we'll discuss that in length today. So for effective gearing, okay, you can imagine that these two gears, that is pinion and gear, taken separately, this is a pinion, this is the gear, one rotates the other. For example, if this is the direction, one rotates in the anti-clockwise, the other will rotate in the clockwise direction. So it is like one is, of course, trying to push the other by a certain torque. It is like something is getting unwrapped over here, wrapped and unwrapped. When we say wrap and unwrap, you can look at this figure over here. Look at this figure A. Just imagine that there is a string or a tight wire wound around a cylinder. Okay, it is connected at the point F. So this keep the cylinder stationary and say this is a string. Okay, so it has been tightly wound and initial position is A. Now, when it starts to unwrap or unwound from the cylinder, what is the path it will take? It will take this path, right? So for example, this is the point B. Our point of interest is B. So how the point B will move? Now B will move, initially it will be at position A, then it will move to this current position here, and then it will continue on towards C. Now, similar to this action of unwrapping of a string or a wire around a cylinder, the gear also should engage or disengage, or in other words, wrap and unwrap over each other. Correct? So you have a gear on which there is a pitch circle and a base circle, and with respect to that you have a profile. So that profile wraps and unwraps itself over each other. Okay, wraps and unwraps over each other. So how will it look like? So if you just describe it, it looks somewhat like this. See, initially the position is A0, okay, no unwrapping. When it starts to unwrap, it is say B1, B2, B3, B4. So what happens here? Always you see, the moment it unwraps, the line that is connecting here is always a tangent over here. Okay, so for A1, B1, A2, B2, at this point it always becomes a tangent. Okay, not here, sorry, here. So A3, B3 is here and A4, B4 is here. So it always becomes a tangent. So that is one calculation that we have. So that unwrapping gives a locus, and that locus we call it as involute. The name comes because that unwrapping of that string over the cylinder, okay, maybe the cylinder is stationary. So now here you can unwrap it. That same string without changing its length, whatever it is, it was fixed here at A0 position. Now we are slowly unwrapping to B1, B2, B3, B4 position. At the same time, it is always a tangent. It is always a tangent to this base cylinder, or also called as base circle. Okay. So what is the importance of base circle? We see always we do the calculations based on pitch circle. That is fine. But when it comes to the shape or geometry, it is a base circle that is taken into perspective. All our calculations, that is, you can say the average diameter, which we call as the pitch circle diameter. We always say the PCD, right? Pitch circle diameter of a gear. But that is for calculations. But when it comes to involute profile, when it comes to such relations of trigonometry where you have to draw the profile, it is a base circle that is always highlighted. Okay, so it is from there that you draw. Okay, so this is just a recap of what we already know, and how we can get a involute profile. Okay, now let us consider how the engaging and disengaging happens, and this also helps us to understand. In the previous class, we had discussed one point, that at any given moment, it is assumed that the entire load on the vehicle or the payload is concentrating on one tooth. Even though that is true, but most of the designers don't like that idea. So we'll understand why is that. You say this, there are two tooths profiles. Okay, I think I should name, this is the same tooth here. Okay, I should not tell it as two different tooth, but say this is in motion, this is rotating, same tooth. Okay, after a time interval t, it has come here. Okay, depending on its RPM, say at time t is equal to 0, it is here, and some t is equal to some finite quantity, say t is equal to t1, it has come over here. In the meantime, what happens? How the engaging and disengaging is? You see, this is the addendum circle of the gear in perspective, that is of the pinion. Okay, I'll write here pinion. Pinion is something which drives, right? So it is a driving gear, and this is the truth profile of one tooth that I am considering. Now, how the engaging will occur? The engaging occurs when the dedendum part of the pinion, okay, dedendum part of the pinion is already in contact to the addendum part of the gear. So this addendum circle that you see here, this is of the gear, this is of the pinion. Got it? So addendum part we know is the topmost part, it is a tip of the tooth, and this is the dedendum part over here. Okay, so the addendum part of the gear is actually making contact with the dedendum part of the pinion, and that engagement or meshing will continue. See, it traverses like this. It will start here and traverses in this direction over the involute in such a way that it will reach a point B. Okay, it will reach a point B. So the engagement of the gear is from point A to, that is small letter A to small letter B over here. As and when it passes, it traverses through the pitch circle line also. So we can say that this is the arc of approach and this is the arc of recess. Okay, arc of approach and arc of recess. So it is a time taken. Okay, the time taken for the tooth to start engaging and the totally engage at some point and totally disengage at some point. So in between here, it is a pitch point which we call, where both teeth will have equal contribution. That is, both if you locate the locus, both will be having the same location. For example, I'll simply draw here. If this is like this, then both will be having the same location over here. So half of this and half of this. Okay, from the top to bottom you will have half, and for this one also this is top to bottom. So kind of, I think you can easily understand that here, that this is almost at the center, not exactly the center, almost. So this is the exact pitching point, or you can call as pitch point. This point is of importance here. Now, what happens is, as we mentioned, that the tooth contact begins at the ends of the intersections of the two addendum circles with the pressure line. Okay, so this is the pressure line, and this is the involute. This is the involute that we have just described, or also called involute angle. Okay, and this pressure line will continue, okay, from A to B, and it happens for each and every tooth pair. Now, what is the contact ratio here? If I describe the contact ratio, suppose say it is called MC. In some standard textbooks it is given as MC. It is something like QT by P. So what is this QT? QT is here, okay, QT or QA or QR, it is something to do with the arc of approach. Okay, so engage to disengage. So I can say QT is equal to QA plus QR, so total distance. And what about P? What is pitch? We call it the circular pitch. In general, what is pitch? In general, what is pitch? For example, if you have a tooth structure like this, you are taking this location to the immediate adjacent point. This is the pitch, right? This is valid when it is of straight nature, okay, linear fashion. There is no curvature. But how will you define a pitch for a curved surface like a gear? So in the same way, that is from one point of one tooth to the same corresponding point on the adjacent tooth. So if you have something like this, so this is the gear from here to here, and this distance cannot, it is not straight distance, right? You cannot just say, okay, from here to here. It is a curved distance. It is a curved distance. That is why we call it circular pitch P. Okay, circular pitch. Now this is defined as a contact ratio. Now, if this is equal to 1, okay, this is case 1 I am taking. Say this is equal to 1. What does it mean? That means when one of the gears is engaging and is in engagement, it will traverse through this point, slide over the surface, and when it comes to point B, it will totally disengage. Okay, and during that time, the load will be concentrated only on this one tooth. What about all the remaining other tooths? Say there are 30 teeth, 40 teeth. What about the remaining 29 or 39 teeth? They'll all be simply idle. There will be no contact or engagement with them. Okay, of course, there will be some other engagement other side, but when you catch a two pair, that is two gears, that is one pair only, it is deemed as saying that when contact ratio equal to 1, the entire load will be concentrating on one particular set. Got it? So QT by P is equal to 1 means only one pair of tooth is making contact. And the rest of all are idle. They are not making contact with the respective pairs of other teeth. So that means only one tooth is responsible for carrying the load, whether it is impact load, shock load, reversal of load, whatever it is. Only one tooth will be responsible. Of course, we when doing the calculations for the stresses, we will take that into consideration, as it is like entire load is concentrating on one tooth itself. But as a design point of view, this is not good. Why? Because we would like to, it is something like this. Say one teeth is engaged, it is about to get disengaged. Okay, suppose say this is like this, about to get disengaged. We would like one more tooth to make a successful engagement with the next set. Then what happens? A load is slightly shared between these two teeth. Don't you agree? It is not like only one teeth is responsible. So though you have stresses here, we would like to see that, okay, even before this gets disengaged, we would like to have a successful engagement of the next set of teeth. And for this, instead of 1, we can go for 1.2. Okay, we can go for 1.2. When we have such an arrangement that QT by P is equal to 1.2 or even above that, That means one teeth is engaged totally, okay, it is slided over and about to get disengaged by rotation, by virtue of rotation. The other set is already come in and started engaging. So this is what we want, okay, rather than simply one simple pair having the entire load at any given moment of time. Though our design based on every tooth will be for a single tooth, but practically speaking, we would like to design a gear in such a way that the contact ratio remains more than 1. Okay, so this is a little bit information regarding the contact ratio. See, these things are not found in your notes, okay, that will be supplying with you later. So I am just giving you for further information and also to understand the importance of these lines and pressure lines and etc. Okay, fine. Now let us go to the failure in gear tooth, or I should say stresses in gear tooth, rather than simply saying failure. How does a failure occur in a gear tooth? We say when the gear tooth fails, what does it actually mean? We'll do some reverse engineering here. What actually happens? Say there is already a gear tooth. Why does a gear tooth fail, or it simply breaks off? We have to understand what are the forces or stresses that are acting on the gear tooth. Now, a gear tooth, as I mentioned in the previous class, can be regarded as a beam. What kind of beam it is? Suppose say this is one structure which you have totally fixed. The base circle and its entire volume, okay, the disc part, you have totally fixed. I can differentiate it like this. You have a disc on which some gears are mounted. Of course, we don't design it that way. We use gear hobbing method, indexing plate, etc. You know how it is done because you have done the workshop and you have all, or maybe you are going to do it, but you have some idea how gears are cut. You have a full disc on which grooves are cut, which we call it as a gear, in simple language. Catching individual tooth, okay, considering individual tooth, what is it actually? It is a beam that is mounted on a disc. Okay, so that disc part, let us say it is stationary or it is opposing the motion. So we'll keep it as totally constrained as far as your FEM language is concerned and also your ANSYS part. So let us say it is totally constrained. Now this is a beam. What kind of a beam it is? Just imagine your, of course, the stresses are shown somewhere over here, but say the worst part, the worst case that it can have is over here, correct? So whenever you have a beam like this, where at the most tip you have a force, that is a worst case scenario. That is the worst a gear can go through, where the total load is totally concentrated at the tip, and this will give rise to maximum bending stress at the root. Maximum bending stress. So these areas which you see are sigma b, maximum bending stress. Okay. Now, what about the other forces? See, we have the tooth normal force, also called Hertzian contact stress. How these are applied? See, these are applied when the adjacent tooth is making contact over here, and locally there is a variation of stress. So this is one taken from again an FEM solution, I should say. I'm not very sure which one and how much is a parameter here, but let us forget that. But we know that here it is a very high stress level. Okay, locally there is very high stress. Why? Because this is the immediate front or immediate contact point, immediate contact surface. So these surface stresses, whichever are called Hertzian contact stress, is acting on this gear tooth, and this also will be very high at the tip, so that we all will agree. Okay, so what are we dealing with here? It is the same to say that this is a cantilever beam. It is fixed at one end. Okay, it is fixed at one end, and you are applying the force at the other end. So due to that, there is a huge amount of bending stress. Okay, yes. So if the gear fails due to the contact stresses, okay, let me talk about little bit about contact stresses. So this is related to surface endurance. Okay, this is related to surface endurance. Whereas here, this bending stress, this is related to yielding strength. So which are the two forces acting on the gear tooth now? If I ask you simply to just to revise, one is the bending stress and one is the contact stress. Bending stress at the root, contact stress on the entire surface, whichever is taken. Okay. Bending stress, what is the limiting part here? We would limit it by using yield strength observation or even using bending endurance limit. Whereas contact stress is something to do with the surface itself. The more harder the surface, the better is the contact stress management. Okay, you can manage the stress better by using a harder surface material. Fine. Okay. Now let us understand the tooth profile. Now what kind of tooth profile do we want? Because we discussed the beams in length, that is when discussing springs, I think this discussion will become much easier for us. Okay, so let us go there. Just compare these two beams. I think it is very familiar to you because recently you had discussed this in the discussion of single leaf plate spring. So we understood that cantilever beams can also behave as springs. Okay, we will not go to the spring factor here because we don't want a flexing action. It should be rigid. We don't want a flexing action. But just understand what are the stresses that go through this. See, if you have a beam structure like this, where you have reduction in both thickness as well as width. Okay, reduction in thickness as well as width. We call it the, I think you remember something now, uniform strength beam. Okay, to get a uniform strength beam, you can have such a structure where the width as well as the thickness go on reducing as the length increases. So for example, sigma you take anywhere, at the root you take, say sigma at location L is equal to 0 you take. Okay, so this is L is equal to 0 here and L is equal to L here. These are your limits, some value. So you take here, you take this cross section over here, you take this cross section, or that is what is described over here. Anywhere you take, sigma should come almost the same. Okay, how did we get that? If you just slightly recollect this formula, mc by I, how did we get here? I'll just do a slight brief thing. C is equal to T by 2 is what you will substitute here for this. Okay, I is equal to 1 by 12 according to the nomenclature here, WT cube. Actually it is BT cube, but in this figure it is described as small w, so I am maintaining that W. Okay, so it is WT cube. Okay, so when you substitute all those factors and give a suitable moment, that is m is equal to f into, okay, f into x, I should say m is equal to f into x. What is this x? X can take a value of L also. Okay, x, the final value that x will take is L as it traverses and goes to the end. But for this cross section that is described here, these are the values, and from that we derive this sigma is equal to 6fx by Wt square. Okay, now for a uniform strength of beam, that means for sigma, suppose say you keep T constant, sigma and T to be constant. We are keeping two things constant now. We want sigma to be constant, we want T to be constant. That is, we don't want to change the thickness and we don't want to change the sigma value. Then what should be done? Say you are arresting sigma, you are arresting T value. Okay, T square you are arresting. What are the only factors that you can change now or you can play with? You can play with x and w only, because f is anyway constant for a given moment of time. Okay, x by w needs to be constant. Okay, but does it mean you can take any value of x and w? You see, the t is constant and w should vary linearly with L. Only then this equation will make sense. That is, you should have a relationship between what is the length L, what is its percentage, and what are the different thickness depending on the t where it is located in L, W will vary. So the W is highest at the root and the least at the tip. That is how we understand the uniform section beam. Okay, now this is regarding one part, but do you think this one will solve our problems? For example, I'll just draw. This is a part. Okay, so one more gear tooth will come here. Similarly, okay, just for example sake, we are taking this triangular tooth. But is it possible to take such a cross section? Just as we took laminated springs, okay, it is not possible for us to take any cross section for that matter, because you just see if this is the tooth, then when it traverses, the tips will engage and disengage and it will lead to immediate failure. Okay, it will not hold for a long time. Why? Because there will be very high stress concentration. Though the thickness is same, thickness it can hold, but this profile cannot hold itself. Okay, this also cannot hold because you are getting thinner and thinner as you go to the top where the forces are higher and higher. Then what is the solution for this? What kind of gear tooth profile do we need? So let us go over here. Just consider if this is a possibility. Why we take this as a possibility? The reason being, suppose say this is a gear tooth. You can keep the face width constant. This is a face width, right? You can keep the face width constant. That means the load will be, which is on a line, that line will remain constant. We have a line contact. So from start to the end, you have the same line contact. Correct? But we know you should have an involute profile. Okay, we know all those things. It should have an involute. We should have line contacts. That is why B is constant. Okay, that is why the B is constant. Now, let us see, but by keeping B constant, here in the previous figure, B was not constant. B was continuously varying. B is a maximum value to 0. That also we cannot have. Okay, this shape also we cannot have. Though B is slightly more here, with that the first one also we cannot have. So the only possibility is to have this kind of a shape. Now, what is this shape? We will see. So sigma is equal to 6f into x in the same terminology by Wt square. Okay, W and B here are interchanged. Okay, I can write this as, this is B here. Okay, don't get confused because the figure is not matching what this one. I've taken it from different sources, so there might be a slight mismatch, but don't confuse it. W means B, or I think I'll better, you don't get confused, so I will use this one itself, no problem. Bt square. On similar lines, we can write 6fx by bt square. Okay, now you want sigma and B to be constant. Then what is the condition? Say what you are doing constant, sigma, you want uniform strength. It is not to say that, okay, let it have great strength at the root and very less strength at the tip. You want to have a gear tooth structure or a gear tooth cantilever beam in such a way that wherever you apply the load, this will have equal stresses on its body. Only there will be some equalization of stresses. So sigma is constant, B is constant, F is already a constant. So what is the only thing remaining? X by t square must be constant. What is this x by t square? What does it describe? Can you write like this mathematically? If x by t square is a constant, if that constant is k, can I write like this? X is equal to k into t square. Correct? X by t square ratio is a constant. That ratio I'll assign to something, say k or a, whatever it is. Now this, what is this form? Do you remember this? Yeah. This is y is equal to ax square, a parabolic form. Got it? So what is the shape now here? We are dealing with a constant strength parabola. Okay, so this shape or curve, we go for a constant strength parabola. Okay, so the involute profile has to take care of all those possibilities. Okay, that is, you want sigma to be constant, you want the face width to be constant. The only way you can change is change the thickness as it traverses from dedendum. So this is the dedendum part, this is the addendum part. So from dedendum to addendum, you choose the profile in such a way that it gives a constant strength, and the closest that we can come is a parabolic shape. Okay, fine. So more on that we will discuss. That is, can we have a little bit more extra here? I mean, can you put some little material extra and say, okay, uh, that is going to give us more strength. We'll also discuss that possibility. So it is said that in 1892, in the year 1892, okay, researcher by name Wilfred Lewis, okay, Wilfred Lewis, he was the one who suggested that the shape, okay, he did a lot of calculations and he came out that, okay, we need to come to a very formative shape or something like, okay, you give some parameters, any gear can be designed which is having tooth with this equal strength, which is having tooth which will not fail easily. The crude method would be to do some trial and error, but he came up with some equations, and that is famously called as now the Lewis equation for the gear. Okay. Now, what are those components? We'll understand why this is very important to us. You look at this figure here. Okay, some parts are missing. Okay, fine. We know that say, okay, this dashed line that we have put here is a constant strength parabola that we just described. Why we need constant strength parabola? Because sigma and b to be constant. Okay, should be constant. That is why it is called a and because of that profile, we call it the constant strength parabola. Now, say concentrate on this one simple gear tooth. Now you have the weakest part here, that is the root, and this is the remaining part of the disc downside. This is one whole gear tooth. This dashed line represents the constant strength parabola. You have one more here. Okay, suppose say you have a very pointed shaped, okay, very crude teeth, and you have built one more, a very slightly rounded off and a better looking teeth over here outside. Whichever the case, this is F, that is the force acting normal to the tooth. See, the forces are acting normal to the tooth surface, that is what we take. If you take normal to that tooth surface, then normal to our plane, you can describe it as two components, Ft and Fr. So Ft refers to the tangential tooth lobe. I am using the same terminology as your data and tangential tooth lobe, and this is Fr, meaning the radial tooth lobe. Now, just from the figure also, and it is correct from the point of view in practicality also, this F, this is the involute now for us. This is the pressure angle on which the force acts. Obviously, pressure angles are around 14 and a half, 20, some very few cases it is even 25. Okay, so being less than that, okay, or in the range of that, you can immediately understand that Ft is greater than Fr. So we'll try to see what is the contribution of this Ft, okay, and come out with an expression which helps us to understand what are the stresses on this. Okay, so in order to compare these three profiles, for example, this one, that is a straight pointed triangular one, parabolic one, and something extra. Okay, maybe by some virtue, okay, I'll give it some extra, it will be make it more stronger, we might think. Okay, so let us say this is our frame of reference, and here I will cut out a section. I'll cut out a section. Okay, and let the cutout be here as point A and here as point B. Okay, and A and B. Now, what about the thickness? You see, I've taken with reference the root thickness T here. If you go up, I can describe this as some other thickness. So let me describe this as, say, this is T1. Okay, I'll write it here. Hold on. It's a bit difficult to. Yeah. So this is B. Let this be T1 and this one be T2. Okay. And obviously this thickness, see, for example, when you cut it like this, if you have a constant and parabolic nature, then this cutout, okay, this cutting over here, what will happen? This will generate a thickness of T1 over that. In other words, for the tooth load Ft given at any point, okay, for example, if it is acting over here, if that Ft is acting on this, okay, F is here and Ft is acting on this, there is a thickness T1 to hold it. Whereas, if you cut the outer part, you will have T2. One thing is very obvious, here T2 is greater than T1. T2 is greater than T1. Okay, so this knowledge we have. What about sigma? Let us describe at point B what is sigma. Sigma B is, you can write Ft into T1 by 2, okay, by 1.2, 1 by 12 into face width. What is the face width? Okay, let me describe it as W, because in your data handbook it is, I think it is given as W. Yeah, W into T1 cube. Okay. Did we miss out anything? Yeah, I think this is M, no? So I think this should be okay. What can we do? Say this is X from the point of arresting. This is our cantilever beam, no? We'll keep that as it is. So this should be, I'll rewrite this. I'm writing the same equation, guys. Sigma is equal to mc by I. So m here is ft into x. So this is m into c is t1 by 2, I is 1 by 12 wt1 cube. So this brings us to 6 ft x, which is the distance from the where you are considering the disk to be started to your section of interest, that is x, and this is w t1 square. Similarly, you can write for sigma a as 6 ft x into w t2 square. Fine. Now we know, since T2 greater than T1, which will be more, sigma A or sigma B? Yes? Mathematically, which will be more for the same amount of load? Ft?
Sigma B.
Yes, sigma B will be more. Okay. Now sigma B will be the more load here, and sigma A will have a lesser load. So what does that actually mean to us? That means this shape, parabolic shape, is the most conservative shape. Parabola is more conservative. Parabola is more conservative. What do you mean by that, more conservative? That means, see, this is the parabola limit, right? To describe a parabola, you should have this profile. Say you are going to put extra here. Fine, definitely the stresses will reduce. Definitely the stresses will reduce. But at the same time, you understand this point, okay? This point is the limiting factor. Conservative means this is the limiting factor. You cannot go below this. Of course, if you go below this, what happens? If you go below this, say for example, I describe here T3, what will happen? Maybe according to the equation, your stresses will come, stresses will be more or less. What will you say? Whatever happens, this particular tooth profile will not be able to stand the load itself. Okay, so this parabola structure is more conservative, which we call. Okay, constant strain parabola is described for that purpose. So anywhere outside you add some extra material, sigma is always going to be less. So parabola structure is what we would like to maintain. Okay, so this is regarding the use and the importance of parabola. Now let us go to the stress at the root location. Okay, so let us for the moment forget about what we did for the cross sectioning. Say it is at the tip, it is acting again as F and Ft. See, we are not considering Fr till now. We'll keep it as it is. It is a second part of the discussion. We'll only concentrate on Ft. So stress at root location. Hold on. Yeah. Stress at root location we'll find. Now our interest is the bending stress, right? So stress at root location, sigma is equal to 6Ft. This time it is H because I am taking the full length, divided by Wt square. So this is what you describe. Okay, and on similar lines. Okay, now you see that if I draw a pointed profile, okay, if you draw one more pointed profile over here, what happens to this x quantity here? A small x is given. See, this is something which is perpendicularly and trigonometrically derived. Okay, trigonometrically what you can say is, so if I put a 90-degree here and you'll define some value of x. So when you do this one more profile, then the x will come here, correct? Okay, one more profile, the x may go up and down. So this x will move up and down depending on what profile you carry over here. Okay, so what should be this x value? So using trigonometry, we can write x is equal to t square by 4h. T square by 4h. Okay, we can find it out later also. That is how it is like that. It's just a trigonometrical calculation. X is equal to t square by 4h. We'll substitute that. Okay, we'll put it together. That is t square is equal to x into 4h. Correct, rewriting. So substitute back here. What will you get? You will get sigma is equal to 6 into Ft into h by, this is W, t square is x into 4h. I'll slightly modify this. Okay, h will get cancelled in this particular equation. Fine. What we are left with is 6ft by w x into 4, or you can say 4wx. Now what I'll do is I'll multiply and divide by the same quantity called P, which is circular pitch. Multiply and divide by the same quantity called circular pitch. Now what will come out? You can write this as ft by, okay, ft I'll keep as it is. This is w. I can write this as 2 by 3 x by p, okay, into p. Okay, this is just mathematics here. 2 by 3 x by p. I can totally describe this as something as ft by w y p, where I'll continue here, y is equal to 2x by 3p, and this is called Lewis form factor. What does this actually mean to us? What is this Lewis form factor? It actually describes the form or shape of the tooth. 2x by 3p. When you define this x you are going to vary. This tooth will go up or go down. Okay, the enlargement or decrease in the tooth height and the profile will come based on this. What is this x? Okay, and we are adding one more property to it called P, which is the circular pitch. We saw its importance previously, that how it affects the load carrying capacity. So y is equal to 2x by 3p is called as the Lewis form factor. Fine. Further, we can do one more changes here. That is, since it is a constant for a given tooth, this will be a constant 2x by 3p. Let us multiply this with one quantity. Let capital Y will be equal to pi into y. It is still the Lewis form factor because you are multiplying just pi quantity, which is 3.14. Okay, and this can be described as, now the equation will change as sigma is equal to ft, this is p by fy, capital Y. Now why we did that was so that we can give a write this same quantity, that is Lewis equation. This is one form of the Lewis equation. One more form is this one, ft into py. Notice what has happened to p. This is not small p, this is capital P, because there is one more quantity called diametral pitch. One more quantity called diametral pitch, which is capital P is equal to pi by p. So because of this, I just multiplied this pi into y. So these are two forms. Basically, it is the same thing. So what did we consider here? Just to recap, we understood that parabola is a more conservative shape. Anything above that, sigma stresses will be lesser. Yes, but you cannot go beyond this. Okay, the most conservative or something I can say most minimum required. Also, this is one point I just forgot to mention. We consider that it is a line contact. In other words, it is a UDL, uniformly distributed load over the length of the tooth. The face width of the tooth. Face width, okay. Face width, and this is UDL. We consider that it is a uniformly distributed load over the face width of the tooth. Whenever it is a line contact and in engagement, it is a uniformly distributed load. Also, we considered that x factor, that is here the small quantity called x, always describes the form factor, that it tells us how the tooth form is. Okay, and using different x and p values, you will get different forms of the tooth. Okay, so this is the importance of the Lewis form factor. Okay, hold on a second. I need to describe something else. I need to add some slide. Yeah. So let me write that equation again. Sigma is equal to Ft capital P by W into Y. Did I describe anything else? Sorry, one mistake here. Okay, I just described it. Ft into P into capital Y, where capital Y is 2 times diametrical pitch into x by 3. Okay, so this is the Lewis equation. Now let us consider what are the limitations of this equation, and also what are the interesting things that we can observe. So we know that a tooth will take a form. So this is a parabolic shape, okay, just like this. Okay, you are keeping I would rather describe it another way, sorry. So this is what your consideration is. It is like a cantilever beam with a parabolic shape, and the tooth load is acting like this, correct? Now this was your Ft load. Actually the load is acting somewhat like this. I would, if you say normal to the tooth, then it is like this, F. Then there is one more component, correct? If you resolve that F into one more component, which is that component that we have not spoken it? Can you guess? This is Fr component. I told you that we'll discuss it later. Yes. So there is F component which is normal at a pressure angle. Then you have Ft which is exactly falling in line, perpendicular, and Fr is something that is pushing in the component. Now, one of the limitations of the Lewis equation is that Fr is neglected in Lewis equation. Of course, we are not neglecting it now, but in Lewis equation it is neglected. But say, for example, you are considering it. If Fr not equal to 0, if you are considering it, what will happen? Will it change the solution?
Compressive stress.
Exactly. See, just imagine Ft is applying bending stresses. So these areas over here will be tensile in nature. And the moment you apply Fr, it's a positive value. That is, Fr is a positive. Of course, it will be positive only. There is no question of negativity here. Fr is a positive value. It is like saying these stresses are relaxed. This is already tensile here. This is already positive here because of the bending stress. Because sigma b is positive. Correct? It is trying to push it, and this stress concentration is occurring over here. Of course, on both the sides, but one side it will be of tensile in nature, highly tensile in nature. It is going to trying to pluck out the teeth. So sigma b is very high in nature. This Fr being positive is actually going to reduce the stresses. Fr, or I should say total stresses are reduced. Okay. Are reduced. So it's not a problem at all for us. Fr is neglected in Lewis equation, yes. So we are considering a case where Fr is equal to 0. Then we are designing it. So that means even if Fr is there, it is going to help us. It is not going to cause undue stresses on the, it is not going to cause any undue stresses on the root of the gear. So that is one very important conclusion, that even if Fr is neglected, even if it is there, it will be positive. It will never be negative in nature because of the tooth profile and the engagement and meshing of the tooth. So that is why you can say the total stresses are. So Lewis equation is more conservative. Again, more conservative. The worst case scenario. Worst case, also that is it has been already taken care. Okay. The second one is, of course, this is a problem. This is an advantage. This was an advantage, but this is not an advantage. The second one, it is not considering, does not consider stress concentration at the root. It is not considering stress concentration at the root level. So we know that this is the stress concentration here. Okay, this area. In the earlier case also we had seen that if this is the tooth profile, that these are the stress concentration areas. So there the stresses are high. It does not consider the stress concentration. Now how do we elevate that? Instead of making the tooth like this, we now give it fillet. Okay, we do filleting. So that is one fillet radius we give over here, so that this stress concentration is reduced. But of course, when the Lewis equation was described 100 years back, more than 100 years back, this concept was not known. So that is why we cannot just say, okay, he has not considered it. Maybe the people later on understood that this is a problem. So they slightly changed it. They gave it a fillet in order to reduce the stress concentration. The third one, the third limitation is that force is concentrated at tip. This is also an advantage to us. Force is concentrated at tip, or you can say it is also one of the assumptions that Lewis made, that force is always applied at the topmost or the tip, okay, where the addendum circle lies. So force is concentrated at tip, so that is what he assumed. But this is an advantage to us. This is the worst case scenario again. Okay, and the fourth one is a disadvantage, that friction is not considered. Friction is not considered. Which friction we are talking about? The friction that we are talking about is when the line contact occurs. So the gear is here, it is contacting, gear is here, it is contacting. So it is sliding one over the other, right? There are two actual materials, two metals, which are rubbing against each other. Which are actually rubbing against each other. So there is friction, there is heat generated. Okay. So this Lewis equation does not take into account all those factors at its primitive form. Okay, at its primitive form. Along with that, there are some other factors. Suppose say you have a gear which is running at some RPM. Okay, these are all the tooths. Obviously, we'll agree that this has a dynamic effect. It is like a certain mass is getting thrown out. Okay, it is trying to come out over there. Okay, so there is a certain amount of force associated with that. So the dynamic action of this mass on the gear is different. Along with, I can say, contact stress, there is a bending stress, and also there is a dynamic effect. Due to the rotary nature of it, there is some effect. This dynamic effect is called Kv. Okay, this factor called Kv. We'll see in the future classes that how it is this adding to this particular form. So in simple terms, if I say Kv is to be multiplied with this original equation, FTP by W into Y, okay, capital Y here, and Kv will depends on, this dynamic factor depends on speed, or also called RPM of the gear. The more the RPM is, the more dynamic factor it will carry with it. Okay, the more dynamic factor it gets carried. Okay. So now I think we have discussed most of the things. Now one more small topic we'll discuss, that is on a little bit about contact stress. We are not going to derive any equations here, but a little bit information on contact stress. This may be helpful for you for your future projects also. Okay, so we know that two gears are engaging. Okay, one is pinion, one is gear, and there is a contact over here, a very high profile contact. Actually, this equation is described to be, it is somewhat like this. The profile, if you look at, okay, it will come out to be like this. At that particular tooth, if you draw the profile of the stress, it will come out something like this. And they have described an equation for it also. We will not go into depth of how the equation came to be, but it is something like a 2f by nbl, etc. Okay, some data handbook also can give you this equation. But our principal objective here is contact stress, which is also called Hertzian stress, also called Hertzian stress. Okay, on tooth, on gear tooth. What are the causes of wear? Okay, these are the stresses that are acting, yes. But you have to understand how the tooth will wear. What are some of the causes? We say, okay, the tooth has got worn out. We say in general language, in common language. But what is actually going on here in this? Due to these, how these stresses have come? These stresses have come because of three things. One is called pitting. Okay, pitting is due to the high contact stresses. So it is directly load related. Okay, pitting means because of high contact stresses, material is getting etched out. Material is trying to come out over there. Okay, due to that localization of stresses, the material is trying to come out of it. One more is called scoring. This occurs due to lack of lubrication. We know that all the gears and gearboxes have to be using some amount of lubricant, especially the gearbox is filled with a pool of oil. All the gears run in a pool of oil. So if there is a lack of oil, if the oil dries out or leaks, then there is scoring. Okay, this is due to the lack of lubrication. It leads to high friction. Basically, it is very high friction. And the third one is called abrasion. This abrasion part is sometimes rare. This is because of impurities. Impurities between contact surface. So some foreign material, okay, maybe a sand particle may come between the two gear tooth. So you have one gear tooth, the other one is meshing, and that particle may interfere. Particles may come and interfere, especially true of gears which are open, are held to open surfaces. It is running openly, then the impurities will come and abrade the particular teeth. Okay, so these are the three things: pitting, scoring, and abrasion. Usually in gear design, we neglect these two, okay, because this is very less. The chances of this happening are very less. But this is the highest form of failure. Okay, so we can say that this occurs mostly due to this pitting. Okay, most of the failure is mostly occurring due to the pitting. A little bit about what are the different teeths that are involved. Okay, yes. So as you can see, there are different types of teeth. Since the beginning of the class, we have been describing some form or the other. You see, with the Lewis form factor, which can be applied to any tooth, okay, and if you gradually increase the number of teeth, you see which profile they can get. Okay, so you can get 14-degree full involute profile, 20-degree full involute profile, and 20-degree stub profile. So what is the difference between this 20-degree full involute and 20-degree stub teeth? Okay, just to describe in a simple way, if the full depth is somewhat like this, the stub teeth will have somewhat like this. Stub means it is slightly lesser height. It's of lesser height. Okay, it's a lesser height teeth. Okay, it is called stub teeth is 20% less height, less than full involute. Okay, 20% less. Okay, full depth has a larger contact ratio. If I just point out the differences, full and stub. Okay, so it is of a larger contact ratio. Okay, compared to the stub teeth. This is in comparison with the stub teeth, larger contact ratio. Then there is a, since the 20% is less, there is a slight difference in the working depth also. Okay, some specific applications they use, but usually we don't go for this 20 this one stuff. Wherever material requirement or you want to make the gear something like say less heavier, okay, where is it is absolute emergency requirement, then we go for a stub teeth. Otherwise with this lesser height, okay, lesser height means everything will change, the form factor itself will change, so it will lead to a different, totally different kind of a teeth. So that is why the engaging and disengaging is going to make more noise. Okay, because you see, if you make 20% less, then what happens is engaging and disengaging arc length is going to reduce. Okay, engaging and disengaging arc length is going to reduce. Anyway, more on this we will discuss in the coming classes as we solve the problems. Okay, step by step we will solve, and in the meantime we will be introduced to different types of trees, whether it is 14, 20 or 20 degree full or 20 degree stub. Okay, so if you have any questions, we'll address it in the next class, students, because I have some work immediately right now. So I think this is all for today's class. You got idea today about, if I just recap, what are the different stresses? What do you mean by teeth engaging and disengaging? It is similar to a string being wound and wrapping and unwrapping. Then you understood the importance of a contact ratio, how important it is at the tooth intersection, what are the different kinds of stresses and its properties. Then you understood how a profile needs to be taken care of, and why we are going for a parabolic profile. Then under parabolic profile, we have understood what is a Lewis form factor and how it came out to be. And we discussed slightly about the 20 degree and 14 degree different types of tooth profiles. So more on this will continue from this slide itself, more on 20 degree full stub and 14 degree in the next class. Okay. Okay, students, thank you for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.